And I want to talk about specifically what I believe we need to be doing on that front, on health care, on poverty, on strengthening the middle class. Before I get there, I want to say something very specific about what's happened here in Michigan. Because here's the problem. You have an extraordinary governor, you have great senators, you have great leaders here in the state of Michigan. You have had no partner in the White House. You've had a man in the White House who's not only been working to help Michigan, he's been actively hurting Michigan during the time that he's been in the White House. This is, I know from the time that I've spent here, this is the place that taught America what the American worker was capable of. This is the place where the middle class began in the United States of America. This is the place that taught us what great manufacturing was for America, not just for America, but for America and the rest of the world. And this is the place that taught America and the world what collective bargaining and a strong union can do for working people, to give them a decent chance to grow and strengthen the middle class in the United States of America. God bless you all for what you've done. And in the face of all these difficulties, and by the way, Jennifer, I'm going to talk about all four of your things. If I miss one, you remind me. I think I got them all four. I see, in the midst of all this difficulty, I see great possibility. But it will require us making some real changes. And others have spoken about this already. And it goes to the very first question that the governor mentioned. Trade. Listen. Free, unfettered trade with absolutely no standards, standardless trade, CAFTA, NAFTA, Bahrain, the list goes on and on and on. We've seen what the consequences of that are. By the way, not just for American workers, but for the entire world, for workers across the planet. We've seen what the consequences are. And by the way, we're now talking about a new trade agreement with South Korea. And the best I can tell, we don't have all the information on it, it's the same old deal. You know, no standards, no meaningful labor standards, no enforcement mechanism. I want to make very clear tonight and announce I am against this trade deal. We need to stand up against it, stand up against this president. Listen, they put workers in South Korea in jail by the thousands because they try to stand up for decent wages, health care. But it seems to me, given what's happening in Michigan, I mean, do we really want to, and by the way, there are so many more Korean cars sold in the United States than are sold in Korea. You know, don't we want our cars, the cars that are sold in the United States, instead of being Hyundai and Kia, don't want them to be Chrysler and Ford? We need trade that works. We need trade that works for American workers, which means there need to be real labor standards, real environmental standards, a way to enforce those standards. There's nobody in this room that's not for trade, but we're for trade that works for America and works for the rest of the world. And I have this idea, I want to talk about it very briefly. You know, I look at what's happened here in Michigan, and I compare it to what's happened in my state of North Carolina, where it's a very personal experience for me. Some of you might remember that I'm the son of a mill worker. I think I managed to say it in every speech I gave for several years. I watched what happened in North Carolina when textiles, which were the manufacturing base in North Carolina, disappeared as a result of trade. I watched what happened in my hometown. My father worked in a mill all his life, and I watched what happened when the mill closed. And it's not only about loss of jobs, it's about dignity and respect for men and women who have worked their entire lives, who built this country, who made America what it is. America was not built on Wall Street. America was built in manufacturing plants by great workers all across this country, here in Michigan, in North Carolina. And I saw what happened when the mill in my hometown closed. Not just what it did to the workers, but what it did to the community. You could feel the life being pulled out of the community. So what we have done in North Carolina is we've made a transition. We have. In the Research Triangle, where we have 3 great universities, you have great universities here. We do play a little basketball in North Carolina, by the way. Play a little here too, I know. Pretty well, actually. But we in the Research Triangle, using NC State, Duke University, and University of North Carolina, I live in Chapel Hill now, we have used that as a base for a whole new industry being created. Biotech, technology, we've created an enormous number of jobs. Now, and the result is, that is the heart and soul of our economy in North Carolina now. Not textile manufacturing. We didn't want to see our textile jobs leave, but they did. So now the question is, what do we do to revitalize our economy? So, in my head, there's an extraordinary opportunity here in Michigan. If we do, and now I'm going to come back to the issue of global warming and energy. I think we have a huge opportunity here. I really do. Here's what I think we ought to do, by the way, about global warming. We should have a national cap on carbon emissions in America. And that cap ought to be ratcheted down every single day, but we ought to auction off the right to emit carbon dioxide under the cap. By the way, I think we can reduce our greenhouse gases by 80% by the year 2050. It's an aggressive goal, but it's an achievable goal. But that money, the $30 to $40 billion generated by auctioning off the right to emit carbon dioxide, it can be used to completely transform the way we produce energy in this country. We use 22 million barrels of oil a day. 12 million of those barrels are imported. We can't sustain it. It has to change to strengthen the American economy and grow the American economy. But we want to do it in a smart way that creates jobs in the places that have been devastated by trade. Michigan is a perfect example of that. You have extraordinary talent in Detroit and in the state of Michigan. You know how to produce. You have engineers, you have expertise, and you have skilled, very well-trained workers. Suppose that we made this the hub for transforming the energy economy in America. Suppose we use, the governor likes that idea. Suppose this money that we're talking about, we should put billions of dollars into investment in the creation of new technology. This could be one of the sources of that, one of the primary sources. At minimum, $1 billion ought to go to our car companies. I don't want to see the fuel-efficient cars in the world built somewhere else. They ought to be able to build right here in Detroit, in the United States of America, by UAW workers. So I think there are great opportunities, but you need a president who partners with the leaders that you have here in Michigan, who believes in what's possible here in Michigan. And I'm here to tell you, I do believe. I do believe because I grew up in a place that was a ways from here, and they all talk like me instead of like you. But we grew up believing in hard work and what could be done, and being able to build and create things. And I think Michigan has extraordinary capacity and capability in doing that. And America needs to be reminded of what an historic and important role this state has played in the building of our great country. It does.